Hey, welcome to Invent Academy. Today we're going to go over Invent Academy's Intro to Basic Creation in Blender. It's your instructor Faye again. This time, fun fact for you. Brandon Sanderson's Way of Kings is a really cool epic sci-fi fantasy book in case you were into that genre. So if you are, do check that out. On today's agenda, we are going to look at mesh creation and how you can model stuff in Blender after a given reference. And so with that, we're going to go over importing photos, types of selection, different view modes, and then mesh creation. For example, in the bottom left corner, we have this picture in solid mode, and then we have this picture in its rendered mode. And you can see how realistic it looks. The other two pictures we have are just other really cool stuff you could create in Blender. This could be you in a couple months down the line if you keep at Blender. It's something that really pays off. All right. Importing photos. This is really useful just for general reference and in case you want something to model against or maybe as some inspiration. And so the easiest way to do that is to drag and drop it from your file browser. So that requires downloading it and then into a place that you can see it and then just dragging it into Blender. I'm just going to go into Google and then I'm going to search sword. Seems like a fun thing somebody could want to model. I'm going to look for a sword that looks cool. Okay, this is very basic, but if I wanted to model something like this, start modeling, this is what I could start with. I'm just gonna save this image into somewhere I can find it again. Okay. And then inside Blender, I am going to click General, and then I can import this Blender, and I can import this photo by opening my Finder, going to my recent downloads or wherever I saved it. If I can find it again. And then I can just drag and drop it into my Blender. And then now you should be able to see it. All right, it is in here. And then right now I can edit it just as easily as it were another object. Right now it is functioning as a plane in Blender. Say I want to reset its transformation back to a 90 degrees. I'll just hit 90 and 0. Oh, 0. And 90. Okay. All right, and so another thing I want to show you before we go back to the photos part is how to add different loops and add more edges to your shape. So for instance, we have this cube. Say I wanted to give it more edges. Right now in edit mode, you can see it only has this one face. A really useful thing to do is to add loop cuts. And so the keyboard shortcut for that is Ctrl+R. And then after you are entering Ctrl+R, you can use the scroll wheel to determine how many loops you want. For example, for this one, you need to be in the edge select, in the edge mode, and then Ctrl+R. And then you can use your scroll wheel to determine how many loops you want to generate. And then say I just want 4 loops, or 4 different panels. I can click into that, and then I can also drag my mouse around to determine where I want these to be placed. And then once I click again, these new edges will be placed. And that does go around the entire model. So if I were to do it again, I could do it on another side, and now make it symmetrical. And then again, so now all of this cube has equal sized edges. So that is subdividing it with loop cuts. And then now we're going to go over types of selection. And so this is really important when you just want to select certain areas and not others. What you can do is hold shift to select multiple at once with box select or circle select. For this one, depends on what you want to select. Say I want to just do faces. Right now I'm in box select by default. I can either select this entire box and that will select everything that the viewport you can see. So like I was in this viewport, so I selected everything here but not the back side. Say I wanted to select everything, I could go into wireframe mode. That would allow me to select everything. Because wireframe mode is essentially a see-through structural mode of this, whereas solid mode is what we were recently in. And so I can also use circle select, and then that allows me to play around with it and say I can just add different parts and not be restricted to a box. And say I want to add just the corners, select just the corners. What I want to do is I want to hold my previous selection with shift, and that will lock my previous selection, allow me to click the corners with ease. And so now I want to deselect everything, I can just click out. Or if I want to add these but deselect one of these, I can just click it again with control and then it will disappear. So that's useful when you just want, say I want to maybe extrude the outer vertices or the outer faces. That will allow me to transform the geometry of this. Very useful. And now if I want to like maybe add more edges to this, I can just go back to edit mode and then use some loop cuts to give myself more things to play around with. And then I can make some cool shapes out of this, or depending on whatever you need to do. So that is the selection. And so different view modes, we just went through wireframe mode, which is essentially the structural mode, but there's also rendered mode, which is what it looks like if you were to export it. And there's also material preview, and this is good for sampling, just like quick looking at different materials. If you want to like say changes color or texture. And then a quick guide towards materials, it can be found in this panel. It's the one that looks like a red globe. And what you can do here, there's a lot of different modifiers. Some basic ones is the base color. Say I want to like change it to be like purple. And then there are different modifiers like metallic. There's like specular, roughness. Roughness is like how reflective it is, like a very low reflective. Very low roughness would be very reflective. And if you like scroll in, you can see that it's technically reflecting a landscape. There's no landscape to be found, but that is the default Blender environmental reflection. If you were to add your own pictures, this would eventually be reflecting that picture. So there are a lot of different modifiers you can play around with in the materials section. And say, if I go back to rendered mode, it would go back to this boring color because I don't have a reflective thing in this surrounding for it to use. And if I were to go to solid, the material disappears and I can work back in this default layout mode. And so now we're going to start with mesh creation, and I'm going to show you some different ways to manipulate meshes. Say I want to model this sword. What you can do is like just start with adding a plane, but before you add this plane, make sure you have deselected your previous selection. So I can just deselect it by clicking out. Otherwise, if I were to add a plane here, this plane would be part of this, the plane would be part of this selection. So I want to make sure that the plane is not part of that selection. I can click A twice to deselect everything, and then just add a new plane here, and then I'm going to move it here. I'm going to rotate it along the y-axis 90 degrees to match this. And if I'm still not sure if I want to make it even more precise, I can. Okay, it's already at 90. Sometimes it's easier to work in wireframe mode when you have a structure, and then now I can see the structure easier. And so what you can do what I would do to start with this is I'm going to start in edit mode, go to the vertice select, and then I can drag these vertices with G. Just make sure you have one vertice selected at a time, and I can move it to where the points are on this sword. And so also, if I only wanted to modify one edge, one side, right? Essentially the sword is symmetrical. What I can also do is add a mirror modifier. However, to do that, I would need to delete half of my mesh, and the half of my mesh, I can do that by subdividing it once with the loop cuts. And then I'm going to delete this with X vertices. Okay. And now I'm going to mirror it. That's a modifier that you can find inside the tools right here. And then I'm going to bring it back to solid mode so you can see it easier. But I want to mirror it on the y-axis. Okay, so now we see that this is mirrored on the y-axis, and we can bring this together. I'm going to move the whole thing to center it a little bit. Go back to wireframe mode, and then now I can continue editing with just one side. Now I only have to worry about this one side. Okay, and there's more geometry here, and what I can do to remedy that is I can extrude this vertice and bring it there. So there. And then if I wanted to, I can extrude this vertice up here. And then extruding vertices is an easy way to create new vertices. And then Control Z is also useful for undo if you ever find yourself in need of that tool. And so now I have a very basic outline of this, of the sword, and then what I can do to start filling it is I can hold these vertices, select them with Shift, and then I can press F to fill this up. So I'm going to go back to solid mode, and now that has filled this part up. And then for fill, that is essential. You just need to select the vertice that you want to fill. So I'm just going to select these and then press F, and then that will fill it for you. I'm just going to fill the rest. There. And now we have an outline of a sword. Fun. And so now this sword right now it's still a paper sword. it probably couldn't do anything. And now if I want to solidify it, there's another modifier I can use here. So go back to add modifier, solidify, and now this will give it some thickness. Right now it's at 0.1. You can use a slider. There. Now we have just modeled a very basic sword using the mirror modifier and the solidify. And then, yes, so in this slide, just some things to remember. You can extrude things to create new geometry, and that's just used with the E. Extruding vertices can give you can help you create new outlines and forms. Extruding faces is useful if you want to like push that face out. Say I go back to edit mode. If I go to the face select, this is a face. If I were to extrude it, I can shift this out. I don't need it that much out. Maybe just this much is fine. Okay. Looks pretty cool. And then merging vertices. If I wanted to select two vertices to merge, you left click and then there's an option to merge. Let's see if I can find that right now. Okay, these two vertices right now, they are not merged, but that is with the mirror. I'm just going to create another plane to show you this. Okay. Edit mode. Vertices. I'm just going to create some new vertices to show you this. Say I have two vertices and I want to merge them together. What I do is hold them together and then left click, and then I can click merge vertices here, and there's some options. I can just choose at center at my cursor. I'll just merge them at the center, and now they will become one vertice, and that's useful if you want to eliminate gaps between your object. Say I want to fill this with a new side. I'll press F now, and then now that is a new edge and a new face. All right, so now your task, just like what I did now, I want you to find a cool game or movie prop and try to model it. So basically find something from Google. For right now, simpler is probably better. Import it into Blender, make a basic mesh with the vertices, fill them in, and then be creative, maybe add some materials, and yeah, just really have fun with it. And I'm really excited to see what you guys can create. And so thank you. That was today's video, and I hope you stay with Invent Academy, and there's just so much to learn here. Thanks. And I hope I see you guys again. Bye.